You had a really interesting experience with the New York Times recently. You made a whole thread on this. I mean, I read the message that they sent you, and I'm not going to lie, it made my blood boil a little bit. I was like, who do these people think they are?
It's unbelievable.
Walk us through what exactly happened in this situation.
Sure. So there's a reporter from the New York Times who just texted me, and it turns out texted pretty much everybody on the right, and said, based on research from Media Matters, which for those who don't know is a very, very activist left-wing organization whose explicit desire is to essentially shut down conservative media. And the way they've done this historically is to get advertisers to boycott conservative shows or boycott the advertisers so the advertisers boycott conservative shows to pressure social media companies in order to shut down conservative material. So the New York Times explicitly in this message says, based on research from Media Matters, we have discovered that you're one of the people who has engaged in election misinformation. And so we have a question for you. Are you monetized on YouTube? If so, are you part of their monetization So what this is clearly an attempt to do is write an article that is going to then cudgel YouTube for allowing election misinformation 1 week before the election to be monetized. Right? They're going to say that YouTube is at fault if Trump wins, basically. If Trump wins, it's going to be because there was massive election misinformation, and that was so YouTube could make money, and that's because YouTube is corrupt. So the only way that YouTube can avoid the sort of meat grinder set up by the New York Times is to demonetize people like me, right, or anybody else on the right. Now, the example that they cited of me engaging in election misinformation was not, in fact, election misinformation. As people who regularly watch my show know, or even tangentially have seen my show know, I think Joe Biden won the 2020 election. I said that like the day after he won the election. I think that the attempts to thrash against the box by the Trump legal team were unjustified by the evidence that was available. And I was perfectly willing to watch Trump, do all those legal challenges. But then once it gets adjudicated and the state votes are certified, we're done. And that's how the process works. And I didn't see the evidence that was capable of overturning that. So like coming at me with election misinformation is weird. They claim that what I had said was election misinformation was that the voting rules had been rigged in order to ensure a vast number of mail-in ballots and also ballot harvesting. That's true. Okay, when I say rigged, I don't mean like corrupt in the back room. They wrote it into law secretly in secret ink that can only be discovered by lemon juice or something. I mean that they passed laws that were explicitly designed to increase mail-in balloting because they wanted low propensity voters to vote by mail in 2020, and they wanted ballot harvesting so that professional ballot harvesters could go out and take advantage of that. That is 100% true. There's nothing that is false about that statement. It was reported by 538, which is owned by the New York Times. It was reported by CBS News. And they were calling it election misinformation specifically so they could get YouTube to shut down anybody on the right side of the aisle. So, I mean, it wasn't even a good faith attempt to shut down things that they thought were false. It was just an attempt to shut down anything that was to the right.
Now, one thing I find interesting when you talk about misinformation like that, I've mentioned this to Jack yesterday, and I've started taking screenshots of this on Reddit. I've noticed it seems as though some pro-Kamala posts, anti-Elon Musk, anti-Trump, are getting upvoted to the extreme very quickly. And I started noticing this about a week ago where I'd screenshot everything that all of a sudden got like 50,000 upvotes. Random things that would normally not get upvoted that quickly. And I started screen recording them. And I would show Jack every minute I would refresh another 1,000 upvotes, refresh another 1,000 upvotes. And I would sort the comments by newest. And the comments were negative despite the upvotes being overwhelmingly positive for that specific thing. And I have about 20 things screenshotted. And I went back a day later, the thread was deleted. Most likely, I think, for bot activity. And I reached out to the moderators of a non-political subreddit that this was posted to and asked for a comment. Like, have you seen any botting going on? Have you noticed any of this? What is your experience? No responses back. So that's something
so the Federalist actually just reported this yesterday. This exact story was the manipulation of Reddit. I don't know if you saw this. Is like the top headline over at the Federalist yesterday.
No, I didn't see it.
And at Breitbart, yeah, they had a whole thing about the manipulation of exactly this exact thing about how there's obvious, ginned up, astroturfed activity on Reddit in order to increase the visibility of pro-Kamala content.
What's interesting is that the FTC banned fake reviews and botted activity and fake followers from
in August.
Yeah, from businesses. They didn't say anything for political parties. The other thing I find interesting is that it's not illegal to accept donations or payment for an endorsement, which I thought was wild. And I didn't think this was going on to the extent it was, but I heard that like a somewhat distant colleague was offered $10,000 to endorse a candidate. And they turned it down. But just the fact that they're reaching out to influencers saying, hey, if you say this, we'll pay you $10,000 or $20,000.
So it's probably a little hard to make that illegal only because you can say that it's bribery for a vote. It's very hard to say bribery for an opinion because that probably falls under the First Amendment, just in terms of free speech protections. But obviously, in terms of unethical, highly unethical. I mean, if I were to contact somebody and be like, here's 10 grand to support Donald Trump publicly, I don't care how you vote, and I'll write that in the document. You can vote however you want, but publicly you should say that you support Donald Trump for 10 grand. That is very hard to prosecute, deeply unethical.
Just makes me wonder how many endorsements are paid for.
I mean, I have no idea. The truth is, I think that most celebrities are willing to endorse just through social pressure. Why Taylor Swift's silence is deafening, and you get enough of that, and then Taylor Swift suddenly is very political, and she has to make a dumb statement or something. But yeah, I mean, the notion that astroturfing isn't happening is ridiculous. Of course it is.